Hey, this is Ryan from Web Eminence, and in this video I'm going to give you some tips on text styling and formatting for websites to hopefully make your website more attractive. So this is obviously very subjective, so in this video I'm just going to give you my opinions and thoughts on this. So if you disagree with something I'm saying, please don't dislike the video, but maybe just leave a comment to give your 2 cents on text styling and formatting for websites. So I added some sample text to this website here that I'm currently working on, just to show you some examples of some things I look for in text or some improvements I like to make with text formatting. Obviously we could talk a lot about this, but I just want to show you a few things that are going to help you make your website look a little bit more attractive. I'm using a Divi theme in WordPress. If you want to check that out, you can check the link in the description, but it allows me to edit in a visual builder. That's why you see all these boxes popping up. So I won't explain all those, but I'm just going to edit the text. The first thing I want to mention is these 2 side-by-side text boxes. In my opinion, you want to avoid having large blocks of text unless there's a really specific reason for it, because it's a little daunting to the reader. It's better to break it up. So I'm going to make my changes in this right column. These are identical blocks of text. So if I were to break up these text areas into paragraphs, I might just do something like this to make it 3 paragraphs. It's maybe a little bit easier to read and not quite as scary as this huge block of text. So that's my first tip, is just to create shorter paragraphs and add some spacing so it is less intimidating for the reader. So the next thing I'll mention using this section down here is the use of headings. This can be good for SEO, search engine optimization, like using H1 tags. I'm not going to get into that too much though. You can check that out in another video. I'm going to focus more on aesthetics here. So if I wanted to make this look a little bit nicer, a little bit more useful for the reader to kind of skim through and see the important items, this content has headings, but it's in the same format as the paragraph below. So we could definitely just dress this up a little bit to make it a little more exciting and make it easier for people to skim and find what they're looking for. So I'm just editing this block of text on the right. It opens up the normal WordPress text editor in this little window here. So maybe I'll move it over to this side so we can see what's happening. But I could use the WordPress editor just to add a heading here. The heading 1 is a little big in this case, so I'm going to go down to 4, and I'll do that for each of these headings. So after changing the style of those 4 headings, you can see it already looks a little bit better. You can see the important headings, they stand out, and it is really just more interesting to look at. So I wasn't going to talk too much about color in this case, but this is a good place to mention it. So we could add some color here to these headings to make them stand out a little bit more, and maybe in this case I might fit them with the design theme, which you can see in the logo up here. So one of the nice things with this Divi theme is I could just click on one of these, it takes me to the H4 heading tag, and I could just change the color to like orange, or in this case purple, which kind of matched with the theme. So again, how you do these changes is obviously going to depend on how you're building your website, whether you're using a theme or just coding it. A lot of people might use CSS styling to create these types of changes, but I'm just trying to give you an idea of the different ways to improve how the text looks aesthetically. So this is already looking better, but I do think that it maybe needs a bit more spacing. So in my opinion, I would probably want to add another space here after these headings just to separate the sections a little bit more. And it does take up a lot of space, or it takes up more space. So if space is important to you, you might not want to do that, or maybe you would change the size of these headings, but just giving you an idea here of some options. So I'll mention something else up on this top text section. One thing I like to do to add a little bit of interest to large sections of text is maybe change the first line or the first paragraph in its styling, or maybe its size. So for example, I could take this first paragraph and maybe try to make it a little bit bigger just to make it stand out a little bit. Maybe if it's kind of a summary statement for this section, or you could try to make it like italics, or maybe we'll try bold. And that just makes it stand out a little bit. It's still connected to these text sections, but it just adds a little bit of variety to make it more interesting. So there's obviously a lot of other things you could do with text styling. There's all caps, which you probably don't want to use too often. There's alignment like justify, or left, right, center alignment, which you could obviously use to add some variety. Another thing you should mention, because I see it used poorly often, is text line height. So depending on what theme you're using, hopefully it'll be set up to already be in a kind of a desired zone. But if you find that, you know, maybe your text is too scrunched in terms of line height, it might look something like this, and it's just not very easy to read and just not very pleasing aesthetically. Usually you want to be somewhere between 1.2 and you know, it looks like this one's set to 1.7, and that basically means like 1.7 times the line height. But you'll want to play around with that. It'll depend upon your text size, but usually somewhere between there and maybe 1.2 is usually going to work and look the best. So those are just some of my opinions and what I do on sites to make them look a little bit nicer. You can tell just scrolling through here, the right side obviously is a little bit more interesting and just a little bit more unique in its design than the left side, which is just using plain text, all the same size, color, and font. So I'd love to hear your comments. I obviously didn't cover everything here, and that was just my opinion. So I'd love to hear your opinion. So feel free to comment below and let us know some of your tips for improving the typography and just the overall look of the text on your website. If you're looking for some help to actually write the text content of your website, you can check out my video linked here, where I go through some tips on writing content for a small business website. So go check out that video, and we'll see you over there.